Good evening, friends. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. Before we drift into the soft glow of history, I invite you to settle in, dim your lights, let your phone rest a little farther away, and tuck yourself under the comfort of your blanket. Feel the weight of the day gently roll off your shoulders as the night begins to cradle you. If this calm journey helps you unwind, you might tap, like, or even subscribe, but only if it feels right, only if it brings you peace. No pressure, just rest. Tonight, we'll let our minds wander to a place both far away and yet so close. Because the story of human curiosity belongs to all of us. Imagine a quiet city in the desert, the air heavy with dust and whispers of trade. Camels kneel by the gates, their sides rising and falling after long journeys across endless dunes. In their packs lie salt slabs, ivory, and cloth, but perhaps the most valuable treasures are the bundles of parchment and books, carefully wrapped against the dry wind. This is Timbuktu, in the heart of West Africa, centuries ago. A place whose very name became, in later times, a shorthand for the end of the world. And yet, for those who knew it, it was a glowing lantern of knowledge. Here, scribes bent low over their desks, lantern light flickering on their faces, copying words line by line, sometimes for hours, sometimes for nights on end. Their quiet labor carried the voices of scholars, merchants, rulers, and poets through generations. Let me tell you, there is something oddly soothing about picturing a room lit only by oil lamps, the faint crackle of the wick, the smell of ink and parchment. Have you ever noticed how your mind calms when you imagine steady, repetitive sounds? Like the scratch of a quill on paper. It's a rhythm that could lull even the busiest thinker into a gentle doze. These scribes must have known it, to the way time blurs, when the lantern is steady, when the ink flows smoothly, when the words of someone long gone find new life beneath your hand. And perhaps, just perhaps, you felt something like that yourself. Maybe while copying notes in school, your pen moving almost automatically across the page, or while sketching absent-mindedly in the margins of a book. That quiet trance, where your hands know what to do and your mind drifts gently elsewhere. Doesn't it feel familiar? That's the state these scribes lived in, night after night, century after century. Picture the room more clearly now. The walls are of clay, cool against the hot desert day, but at night they hold a comfortable warmth. The floor is simple, perhaps packed earth or worn mats. A low wooden desk, not unlike a humble coffee table, holds the tools of the craft, a reed pen sharpened with care, a small pot of ink, dark and glossy, parchment or paper smoothed flat. The scribe bends low, sometimes resting one hand lightly on the page, the other guiding the reed. Lantern light flickers, shadows stretching across the page like soft, moving fingers. The hum of the desert night filters in through a small opening, perhaps a window, or simply the cracks in the wall. You hear the faint shuffle of a donkey settling in the courtyard, the rustle of palms beyond, and inside, only the steady scratch, scratch, scratch of pen on paper, like a lullaby made of ink. Now, imagine the text itself. Perhaps tonight, the scribe is copying a treatise on astronomy with delicate drawings of the stars, or perhaps a recipe for remedies, ginger, honey, and a rare leaf gathered after the rains. Or maybe a passage of poetry, a line about love or patience, or the fleeting nature of time. Each word matters, because each word connects a chain of memory. Isn't it remarkable how such fragile pages carried whole civilizations' wisdom? And yet, the work was not glamorous. These scribes were not kings or conquerors. They were more like gardeners, tending carefully to rows of words, making sure each survived, each sprouted again in a new book. Their reward was not gold or fame, but the satisfaction of having preserved a voice from fading. Quiet work, humble work. But isn't it often the quietest work that endures longest? As the lantern flickers lower, the scribe pauses. He stretches. His hand flexes his fingers, takes a slow sip of water from a clay jug. Outside, the stars glitter over the Sahara. Inside, the room smells of lamp oil and ink. And you are safe, drifting alongside him, letting his rhythm become your own. And as we sit in this room together, let's lean a little closer to that flickering light. There is more to see, more to hear. Let us begin the first story of tonight's long wandering. The flame sways gently, as if breathing along with us. Imagine the soft halo of light it casts on the parchment, just wide enough for the scribe's careful hand. It's not frightening shadow, it's soothing, like a cocoon that keeps the world outside at bay. Only the words and the scribe remain inside this little universe of light. Have you ever noticed how the smallest details become more vivid in quiet moments? The way dust motes float lazily in a sunbeam during the afternoon, or how the faint scent of paper in an old book makes you pause, almost like a secret handshake from the past. In Timbuktu, those details defined the rhythm of a scribe's evening. Ink had its own smell, earthy, sharp, sometimes sweet, depending on the mixture. Parchment had its own texture, soft as worn cloth in some places, stiff and wrinkled in others. And the sound, oh the sound, not loud, not distracting, just the whisper of a reed pen tracing one line after another, like the desert wind when it's calm. A sound so steady you could fall asleep to it. Perhaps you already are, letting your own thoughts trail off like ink on a drying page. Now, let's follow our scribe's thoughts. He is copying a book on medicine, perhaps translated from Arabic into a local script. He traces a sentence about honey, how it soothes the throat, heals wounds, and brings sweetness to bitter herbs. He smiles faintly because he remembers his grandmother mixing honey with warm water when he coughed as a child. Isn't it comforting to know that across centuries, across continents, people have leaned on the same little remedies? A spoonful of honey, a pinch of spice, a sip of water warmed by the fire. He dips his pen again, careful not to spill. The lantern flame sputters, then steadies. He whispers a line to himself as he writes, testing the words on his tongue. The rhythm of speaking, then writing, then breathing. It's like the cycle of a lullaby. Wouldn't you feel calm sitting beside him, listening to the murmur of old words, watching his hand glide across the page? Outside, the night air carries a coolness. Timbuktu was a desert city, yes, but even deserts have their moments of relief. The stone walls of the house have trapped the day's heat, and now they release it slowly, like a warm blanket against the chill. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then curls back to sleep. The streets are quiet, the markets closed, the traders dreaming of journeys yet to come. Only the scribes keep their lanterns alive, like fireflies scattered through the city. Let me ask you something gently. When you think of history, do you picture kings, wars, big battles? That's what the textbooks often tell us. But here, in this little room, history is nothing grand. It's not loud or bloody. It's just the scratch of a pen, the patience of one person copying the wisdom of another. And isn't that a soothing thought? That the world isn't only shaped by noise, but also by silence, by those who sit still long enough to listen. The scribe stretches again, rolling his shoulders. He thinks about the food waiting at home, maybe a bowl of millet porridge, flavored with dates or spiced with a hint of cinnamon. Simple, filling, gentle, something warm for the stomach before sleep. Food, like words, has its own power to soothe. Perhaps tomorrow he'll copy a recipe for stew or a note about the best time to plant certain crops. Not all knowledge glitters, but much of it feeds, warms, and heals. And so, by lantern light, the work continues. The flame leans left, then right, as if nodding off itself. And you, dear listener, can lean too. Let your head rest a little heavier on your pillow. Let your eyes soften, just as the scribe's eyes soften when the page blurs and the lines grow long. You don't need to finish the page tonight. You don't need to finish the story all at once. You only need to drift, word by word, into a quieter place. The night deepens, but inside the scribe's room, the lantern keeps its faithful glow. Have you ever noticed how a small light feels brighter when the rest of the world is still? The scribe certainly has. Each flicker paints soft shadows across the parchment, almost like little dancers performing in silence. The shadows never tire. They lean, they sway, they stretch, but always they return to the page. He dips his reed pen again, careful not to spill. The ink pot is small, made of clay, its rim darkened from countless uses. He keeps a cloth nearby, folded neatly to blot the excess. The cloth is stained with years of black and brown spots, like a map of his labor. Perhaps, if you looked closely, you might imagine continents, rivers, or the sweep of stars hidden in those stains. Isn't it funny how even something ordinary, like a blotting rag, can hold a whole galaxy if you let your eyes wander long enough? Outside, a breeze drifts through. It carries the smell of sand and distant fires where families are finishing their evening meals. The breeze tugs at the lantern flame, makes it bow, then straighten. It also brings soft chatter from a courtyard, the creak of wood settling, a baby's half-cry that soon fades into a mother's lullaby. All of Timbuktu seems to hum with a gentle rhythm tonight, a rhythm not unlike your own breathing, steady and calm, in and out, in and out. Have you ever looked at the night sky and felt both tiny and safe at the same time? That's what the scribe feels now. His work is small, yes, but in its smallness lies a quiet kind of eternity. His reed pen scratches again. Tonight he copies, not just poetry, but also commentary footnotes from an earlier scholar. The notes argue politely with the text, suggesting another interpretation, another word choice. It's almost like overhearing a calm conversation between two people, centuries apart, meeting across the bridge of paper. Isn't that a gentle thought? That writing lets us whisper across time, never raising our voices, just sharing softly what we've learned. The lantern trembles again, and he adjusts the wick. A puff of smoke curls upward, faint and fleeting, like incense fading into the rafters. The room smells briefly sharper, then settles again into the steady perfume of lamp oil and parchment. The scribe yawns, stretching his neck slowly, and his eyes glimmer in the low light. He could stop now, he could rest. But he adds just one more line, then one more, then another, because sometimes the act of copying feels like rocking oneself gently to sleep. And perhaps, as you listen now, you too feel that rhythm pulling at your eyelids. Word by word, line by line, the work hums on. The desert outside has grown utterly quiet. The city sleeps, and you, perhaps you do too. The oil in the lantern is almost gone now, leaving a flame that shivers but still refuses to die. The scribe leans back, his shoulders rounded from hours of steady work. He sets his pen aside and breathes slowly, letting the silence wash over him. It is the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of pages, of thoughts, of whispers, that will outlive the night. He gathers the finished pages into a neat stack, tapping them lightly against the desk to align their edges. The sound is soft but satisfying, like the click of a puzzle piece sliding into place. He ties them with a strip of cloth, careful not to bend the corners. These pages are not just words, they are seeds. Somewhere, someday, someone will open them and plant their meaning again. Outside, the first hints of dawn are still far away. The desert night stretches long and steady, its cool breath seeping through cracks in the wall. The scribe hears the faint cry of a night bird and the shuffle of a camel turning in its sleep. Even the animals seem wrapped in the same rhythm, slow, quiet, eternal. He reaches for his jug of water again, tilts it gently, and lets the last cool drops roll over his tongue. There is nothing dramatic about this moment, nothing that would make it into a grand story. Yet, isn't it true that such small moments, the sip of water, the glow of a lamp, the scratch of a pennar, the very bones of history itself? Imagine yourself there with him, leaning back against the same clay wall. You feel the rough texture at your back, the mat beneath you, the lingering smell of lamp oil on your fingertips. You close your eyes for a moment, and when you open them, the lantern's flame blurs, soft and golden, like a star caught in glass. That blur makes you drowsy, doesn't it? Just as the scribe's eyes now blink heavier, slower, he whispers a final line from the page, almost like a prayer. Knowledge is light, even in the dark. Then he lets his hand fall to his lap. His breathing deepens, the pen rests, the flame dips lower. For a heartbeat, everything seems to pause, the scribe, the city, even the stars. And in that pause, you too may find rest. Perhaps you let your head tilt, your breath slow, your body grow heavier into the pillow. The scribe will keep watch for a moment longer, but soon he too will drift away. Lantern light slipping into dream, and as the chapter closes, let us step softly out of the room. The flame is fading, but it has left behind words enough to glow. Long after, words that will travel deserts, cross oceans, whisper to strangers who have never walked these streets. Words that remind us that even the smallest, most boring tasks, like copying a page by lantern light, can ripple across centuries. Now, let your mind wander with me into the next part of this journey. For as one lantern fades, another is lit, and our story continues. Good evening again, friend. As we leave behind the lantern's gentle glow from that small scribe's room, I invite you to adjust yourself once more. Pull your blanket closer, settle your head deeper into the pillow, and let your breath find its calm rhythm again. Slow and steady, in and out. The night is still young, and the journey through history is soft and waiting. Now, let us step outside the scribe's chamber and wander through the streets of Timbuktu itself. The air is cooler now, brushed by desert winds that carry the scent of dust, spices, and distant fires. The stars above scatter endlessly, as if 1,000 lanterns are hung in the sky. Walking through those streets at night feels like drifting through a dream. The noise of the datha, chatter of markets, the calls of traders has faded, leaving only the hush of sand shifting underfoot. We come to a building that seems unassuming from the outside. Clay walls, wooden beams, a modest doorway, but inside, it holds treasures beyond gold. This is one of Timbuktu's libraries. Imagine stepping in and being greeted by the smell of parchment, papyrus, and ink. It is not sharp or overwhelming, it is mellow, like the scent of old wood mixed with sun-warmed stone. A smell that, if you close your eyes, feels almost like time itself has a fragrance. Here, scribes, like the one we met before, bring their pages. Families guard these collections carefully, passing them down like heirlooms. Some volumes are wrapped in cloth, others tucked into wooden chests. Rows of shelves, though simple, carry manuscripts that tell of astronomy, law, medicine, poetry, trade routes, even farming tips. Can you picture that? A library not filled with glossy covers or printed spines, but with bundles of handmade books, each one slightly uneven, each one holding the careful labor of human hands, and the silence. Inside is deep, but not empty. You hear the faint shuffle of sandals on mats, the turn of a page, the cough of someone reading quietly in a corner. The sound is as gentle as waves brushing against a shore. Have you ever felt your eyelids grow heavy in a library, lulled by the quiet, the weight of so many words resting around you? That is the spell of Timbuktu's libraries. They don't demand your attention. They cradle it softly until you drift into thought or into sleep. One scholar sits at a low desk, his beard brushing his chest as he bends to read. Another strokes the spine of a manuscript like one would pet a sleeping cat. A child, perhaps, the son of a scribe, carries a bundle of pages across the room, careful not to drop them. Everyone here moves slowly, respectfully, as though the books themselves are alive, and in a way they are breathing with the voices of centuries. Imagine, for a moment, if you could sit down in one of those corners. The mat under you feels rough but steady. The manuscript you hold is heavier than you expect, the parchment warm to the touch from the desert air. As you trace the ink with your eyes, the words feel like whispers. You don't need to understand the language to feel the calm weight of meaning. Isn't it soothing to know that knowledge can rest quietly in your hands, like a stone smoothed by water? And so, we sit together in this library, letting the silence hold us. Outside, the desert sleeps. Inside, the words keep their patient vigil. The library holds more than books, it holds time itself, folded neatly into bundles of parchment. As you sit in the cool clay room, you can almost hear the centuries rustling each time a page turns. The air is thick with patience, as if the walls themselves know that nothing rushed ever lasts. A scholar nearby clears his throat softly, his voice low as he reads a passage aloud. The sound is steady, unhurried, like the rhythm of waves lapping on a shore. His words are in Arabic, but even if you don't follow the meaning, the cadence feels like a lullaby. Have you noticed how certain tones, even without translation, still carry calm? The rise and fall of his reading reminds you of a parent humming a child to sleep, gentle, repetitive, endlessly reassuring. In one corner sits a manuscript bound in leather, the edges frayed, the cover darkened by countless hands. Inside are astronomical notes, drawings of constellations, charts of the moon's cycles, careful records of eclipses. The scribe who copied these must have looked at the same stars you see above Timbuktu tonight. Isn't it soothing to know that the sky you see now is the same one traced by scribes 600 years ago? The constellations have not hurried. They wait, patient and eternal. Another shelf holds poetry, love poems, riddles, moral verses. One line reads, "The heart is a garden watered by patience." You can picture a scribe writing that slowly, smiling as he imagined lovers and gardens, perhaps even adding a small doodle in the margin. Have you ever doodled in the corner of your notes? A flower, a spiral, a sleepy face. It connects you, across time, to these long-gone scribes. The light in the library is dim, not bright enough to tire the eyes, just enough to guide the words. Oil lamps glow faintly, their smoke curling toward the roof beams. The scent of smoke mingles with parchment and the faint musk of woolen cloaks. The air feels thick but not heavy, more like a blanket than a burden. Sitting here, you feel the same comfort as curling up with a favorite book in winter. The hush of snow outside, the steady warmth inside. A young boy tiptoes through the room, carrying a jug of water for the older scholars. His steps are soft, his eyes wide, as though afraid to disturb the words themselves. He places the jug down gently, the clay touching the mat with a dull thud. The sound echoes just a little, then vanishes back into the silence. Even small sounds here feel sacred, and perhaps, as you picture yourself in this place, your own body responds to that silence. Your shoulders loosen, your jaw unclenches, your eyelids grow heavier. The library does not demand alertness. It invites rest. You could fall asleep right here, head tilted back against the wall, the murmur of scholars fading like waves, the scent of parchment wrapping you like incense. The scribes knew this, too, that their libraries were sanctuaries not only for the mind but for the body, a place where one could enter restless and leave calm. And isn't that why we are here together now? Though no one seems to mind, here time is measured not by clocks but by pages. Imagine sitting on a woven mat, feeling its coarse fibers beneath your palms, while the scholars bend over their books, moving as gently as if they were tending small flames. One of the shelves holds a volume on medicine. Its pages are filled with lists of herbs and roots, instructions for preparing poultices and cures for everyday troubles. There is mention of ginger steeped in water to soothe the stomach, and honey mixed with salt for healing wounds. You smile at how familiar it feels, don't you? Remedies that still appear in kitchens today, tucked between jars and cupboards, waiting to help. Isn't it calming to know that centuries may pass, but the comfort of warm ginger tea never changes. The scholar copying this text pauses often, his pen resting while he imagines the taste of the remedies he describes. He chuckles quietly, perhaps thinking of how children wrinkle their noses at bitter medicine, then smile when the honey comes in to sweeten it. Even in serious books, you can almost hear the human voice breaking through, warm and familiar. Another manuscript beside it is filled with trade records, lists of good salt, gold, ivory, cloth, even books themselves, passed along the desert routes. Yet when you picture it, the list is alive with color. White slabs of salt, stacked like bricks, gleaming gold dust in leather bags, bright cloth patterned with dyes, camels kneeling in rows under the sun. Don't you find it soothing to imagine those simple, rhythmic transactions? The weight of goods measured carefully, the numbers lined up like steps in a song. The lamps flicker gently, and the air grows warmer. The library feels like a womb of quiet knowledge, holding everyone inside with steady calm. One scholar yawns discreetly, covering his mouth with his sleeve, then returns to his page. Another leans back for a moment, closes his eyes, and listens to the silence as if it were music. Perhaps you've done the same in a library pretended to study while drifting toward sleep, lulled by the hush of turning pages around you. There's comfort in knowing that drowsiness is a universal companion to learning. And as you imagine this scene, maybe your own body mimics theirs. Your head tilts slightly, your breath deepens, your thoughts slow down. The silence of Timbuktu's library travels across time, wrapping you in the same calm blanket it gave its visitors centuries ago in the corner. A small window lets in the faint light of the moon. Its glow falls across a pile of manuscripts stacked neatly, their edges uneven, their covers simple. The moonlight and the lamplight mingle, making the room feel timeless, as if the walls themselves could float outside of history. For a moment, you forget whether it is the 15th century or today. You are simply present, safe in the embrace of books. The night wears on. The lamps still glow, though their flames grow lower, casting long shadows that sway across the clay walls. The air is heavy but calm, filled with the soft perfume of parchment, smoke, and wool. You sit quietly, listening, and the silence feels alive, live with the softest hum of thought, with the patient heartbeat of knowledge. One scholar reaches for a manuscript wrapped in faded cloth. He unties the knot slowly, as though unwrapping a fragile gift. Reading them aloud is like reciting a chant, the rhythm steady and soothing. Doesn't it remind you of bedtime prayers or old songs where the pattern itself is enough to calm the mind? Another scholar nearby copies a book of stories of travelers, parables of wisdom, accounts of journeys across the desert. His pen moves slowly, his lips whispering each line as though he is telling it to himself. Another speaks of a farmer who discovered a hidden spring and brought life to his fields. These are not just stories, they are lullabies of survival, each one a reminder that patience and hope carry us through. Have you ever listened to a story so quiet that it made you drowsy halfway through? You don't remember the ending, but the sound of the voice stayed with you. The scholars read softly, copy gently, and in their rhythm you find your own rest. The boy who brought water earlier now curls up near the doorway, his head resting on his arms. The scholars let him sleep after all. What better lullaby? The sound of books being born. You curl deeper under your blanket, your breath matching his, steady and safe. The moon shifts in the window, its light sliding slowly across the shelves. The manuscripts glow faintly, as if they are breathing. To each bundle of pages seems to sigh, patient and eternal, waiting for tomorrow's readers. Isn't it peaceful to think of books this way? Not as objects, but as companions, resting quietly until we need them. One scholar extinguishes his lamp, then another. Soon only a single flame remains, trembling in the middle of the room. The silence grows thicker, but not heavy, more like a blanket pulled snug around the shoulders. The last scholar sets down his pen, stretches, and whispers a prayer of thanks. He closes his manuscript, ties it carefully, and places it on the shelf. With that, the room exhales, and you too can exhale. Let your breath grow deeper, let your body soften, for the library is not closing, it is simply resting, just as you are. The words will wait. The scholars gather their manuscripts, tying them with care, each bundle treated as tenderly as a newborn. They rise slowly, joints stiff from hours of stillness, but there is no rush. In this place, even leaving is done with patience. Imagine the scrape of wooden stools pushed back, the quiet shuffle of sandals against mats. One man pauses to brush dust from the cover of a book. Another pats the boy's shoulder gently, rousing him from his curled sleep. The boy blinks, rubbing his eyes, and the room tilts softly around him. Have you ever woken from a nap in such a place, confused but wrapped in safety? That is how he feels now, carried by the library's calm embrace. The manuscripts are tucked into shelves, wrapped in cloth, or placed into small chests. It is almost like watching dandelion seeds float on the wind, some landing close, some drifting far, but all carrying life within them. Isn't that a peaceful image to hold as your eyelids grow heavier? The last scholar blows gently over his lamp. Darkness softens the room, but it isn't frightening. It is warm, like velvet, like the pause between heartbeats. Their quiet brilliance reflects what the scribes do inside. Each star, like each word, a small light in an endless dark. Have you noticed how stars calm you, even when you don't know their names? They remind us that the universe is vast, but it still makes room for tiny lights. The scholars walk home along narrow streets, their sandals tapping softly. Their families wait with bowls of warm porridge or dates to break the long night. Some will sleep quickly. Others will tell their children a line or two from the stories they copied, letting words turn into bedtime tales. Knowledge doesn't only live in books, it lives in voices, in whispers, in quiet exchanges at the end of the day. And you, listening now, may feel your own day's weight fading. The silence of the library clings to you like a soft shawl. You don't need to carry anything more tonight. Not worries, not tasks, not noise. Just this calm image of a room where words rest like seeds in the dark, waiting for morning. So let us leave the library with its doors closed, its manuscripts safe, its silence humming gently behind us. And as we step into the desert night, may that silence travel with you into your breathing, into your thoughts, into your dreams. Good evening once again, dear friend. As we leave behind the quiet of the libraries, adjust your blanket, sink deeper into your pillow, and let your breathing find its rhythm, slow, steady, effortless, painting the sky with pale pink and gold. The air is cool for now, though the sun waits to rise higher. The streets stir with life as merchants open stalls and camels shuffle into the square. But among the sacks of salt and rolls of cloth lies something less expected: bundles of manuscripts for sale. Isn't it surprising to imagine books as market goods laid out like fruits or spices? Yet in Timbuktu they were. Who would then trade the volumes across Africa and beyond? In fact, manuscripts here could be more valuable than gold, for gold could be spent once. Donkeys bray, and children laugh as they weave between stalls. The smell of roasted grain drifts through the air, mingling with the sharper tank of leather and ink. You are the steady percussion of footsteps, the melody of voices, the gentle chorus of barter. One merchant unwraps a cloth bundle and reveals a manuscript. Its cover is simple leather, but inside the words glimmer with careful ink strokes. A scholar leans closer, examining the text. He runs his finger along the page, nodding with approval. He haggles quietly with the merchant, not too loudly, for words deserve dignity. He reads a few lines aloud to draw listeners closer. His voice is calm, his rhythm unhurried, each syllable carrying across the square like wind bells. Its ink still smelling faintly of lamp oil, the parchment warm from the scribe's own breath. Isn't that an oddly intimate exchange? As though the scribe has handed you a piece of his night. The market hums on. Manuscripts slip quietly from hand to hand, joining sacks of salt and jars of honey on camelbacks. Some will travel north to Morocco, others east toward Cairo, still others farther into Africa's interior. The words are seeds scattered by trade winds, finding soil in distant mines, and you, standing in the middle of this square, feel the gentle pulse of it all. The market is alive, yet calm, its rhythm steady, like you're breathing now, in and out, among salt and spice, among laughter and song. The words of Timbuktu move like water, flowing ever onward. The sun climbs a little higher now, spilling gold over the rooftops and warming the square. Shadows shrink, and the marketplace hums more brightly. Still, the pace is not rushed. This is not a place of shouting or clamor, is steady. Like the ticking of a clock you barely notice until you stop to listen. Imagine wandering between the stalls. To your left, rolls of indigo cloth shimmer like rivers of blue. To your right, baskets of dates glisten in the light, their sweetness filling the air. And just ahead, another scribe sits cross-legged behind a low table. Spread before him are pages still drying, the ink glistening faintly in the sun. He fans them gently with a palm leaf, careful not to smudge the careful strokes. He looks up at you with a tired but kind smile. His eyes carry the weight of many nights spent by lantern light, yet also a pride that shines quietly. He offers a page for you to see. It's part of a treatise on astronomy, lines about the movement of the stars. The ink is dark, the script precise. You trace the words with your eyes, even if you cannot read the language, and somehow you still feel their calm weight, understanding its pattern. Beside him, a merchant haggles over a larger bundle. They speak softly, their tones almost musical, rising and falling like a chant. Knowledge packed alongside salt and ivory can. You imagine a more precious cargo. The marketplace smells rich now, layered with aromas. The roasted grain sharpens as vendors fan their fires. Spices, cumin, cinnamon, pepper mingle with the sweet scent of honey. Leather and ink give their earthy undertone. Have you ever noticed how certain scents can slow your mind, as though each breath pulls you deeper into calm? That's what it feels like here. Every inhale is a blend of earth and sky. Every exhale a small surrender. A group of children run past, giggling, carrying scraps of parchment. Perhaps you smile, remembering your own childhood games. Didn't you to pretend, at some point, to be wiser than you wert, chur, explorer, storyteller? The market sways on. Pages flutter in the breeze like quiet wings. A donkey brays softly, and a bell on a camel jingles as it shifts its weight. The music of the market is unhurried, made of small sounds woven together. Nothing jars, nothing disturbs. It is the kind of background hum that could lull you into a nap beneath the shade of a stall. And as you listen now, maybe your own eyelids grow heavier. The rhythm of voices, the sway of animals, the flutter of parchment all blend into one steady, gentle lullaby. Timbuktu's marketplace is alive, yes, but alive in the way a heart is, pulsing quietly, faithfully, endlessly. The sun has now risen, fully above the desert, and its warmth drapes across the marketplace like a soft, golden shawl. Yet the air still carries a coolness, protected by awnings stretched over the stalls. Shade stripes the ground, patchwork patterns of light and dark, like a woven carpet beneath your feet. At one stall, a man arranges manuscripts beside bowls of salt. It may seem strange to us, but here, salt and words share equal weight, isn't it curious how both are necessary, one feeding the stomach, the other feeding the mind? Nearby, a woman sits with her daughter. They are not scribes, but they know the value of books. She runs her fingers along the cover of a manuscript, whispering its title to the girl. The child listens wide-eyed, as though the book is a treasure chest. Perhaps it is. She asks if they may buy it, but the mother shakes her head gently and smiles. Another day, she promises, and even that promise feels like hope planted for the future. A camel groans as it kneels, its heavy load swaying. He adjusts the ropes, securing both bundles of salt and cloth-wrapped manuscripts. And among the goods carried across those vast dunes, words will travel too. Their voices rise and fall like gentle songs, attracting listeners more than buyers. And that is the magic of this place. The value of books is not only in owning them, but in sharing them. Even if you cannot take one home, you can still carry its words in memory. Have you ever lingered in a bookstore, reading just enough of a page to let it stay with you for years? He lifts it onto his back, the weight heavy but familiar. For him, it is not just a chest of papers. It is the proof of his nights, his hours, his patience turned into something lasting. He walks away slowly, his steps blending into the rhythm of the crowd. And you, standing in the midst of it all, feel no need to hurry either. The marketplace does not push you forward. It cradles you. Each stall is like a verse in a long, slow poem, and each voice another line. Your breath moves with the market, now steady, gentle, calm. The morning light grows stronger, spilling across the market like honey. The square shimmers softly, alive with movement, yet never hurried. The voices of merchants rise and fall, blending. into a steady hum, like bees circling a hive. Each sound coins clinking, camels shifting, parchment rustling adds to the music of the morning. At one corner, a traveling merchant has laid out manuscripts collected from distant towns. Some are wrapped in dyed cloth, bright blues and reds, their colors faded by long journeys across desert winds. He opens one bundle, revealing a book on geometry. Its diagrams are simple but elegant, circles, lines, and angles carefully drawn. A group of students gathers around, eyes wide. One boy traces a circle in the air with his finger, trying to match the neatness of the diagram. His friends laugh gently, then try themselves, drawing shapes in the sand. Isn't it soothing to imagine such learning as play, where knowledge slips in quietly like a game beneath the sun? A little further on, an old man recites verses from memory, his voice cracked but steady. The crowd around him listens, some nodding, others closing their eyes. He holds no book, his library is within. And perhaps this is the truest market of all, where words pass not by trade, but by breath, gift to gift, memory to memory. Have you ever memorized a song so well that you no longer needed the paper? That same comfort lives here, where a man's voice is as reliable as ink. The smell of food drifts across the square now. A vendor stirs a pot of millet porridge, the steam rising in soft clouds. He sprinkles dates into it, letting their sweetness melt. Another roasts flatbread over coals, the surface bubbling, crisping, then softening as he flips it. Imagine biting into that bread, warm, smoky, simple. Imagine the porridge, thick and sweet, filling the stomach before a long day. The same food that fuels merchants and scholars also fuels the scribes, reminding us that even the keepers of knowledge need breakfast. Doesn't it feel grounding how wisdom and hunger are met with the same patience? The marketplace glows with this harmony. Knowledge, food, trade, all woven together into the same fabric of life. The scribe, whose chest we saw earlier, passes by again, now stopping at a spice stall. He picks up a handful of cinnamon bark, inhales its sweetness, and smiles. Even he, bent over manuscripts, night after night, finds delight in something as small as a spice. Perhaps he thinks of adding it to his evening tea, letting the warmth seep into his tired hands. The camels grow restless as the sun climbs higher. Their bells jingle, their hooves shuffle, their breaths puff, hot and steady. Soon the caravans will leave, winding northward in slow, unbroken lines. The manuscripts tied to their backs will travel far, carrying Timbuktu's quiet voices into lands of bustling ports and towering mosques. But for now, they wait, swaying gently, part of the market's song. And you, standing in the shade, let the rhythm of it all flow through you. The warmth, the voices, the scents, they swirl together like a soft lullaby. You could close your eyes here, and the marketplace itself would cradle you, rocking you like a boat on calm water. The sun now rests high above Timbuktu, and the square glows beneath its steady gaze. The coolness of dawn has lifted, replaced by a warmth that wraps gently around the city. Still, the market does not rush. Even under the midday light, its rhythm remains calm, unhurried, like the slow turning of a page. A scholar pauses at a stall and leans over a manuscript filled with maps, faded ink, sketches, rivers, mountains, and trade routes. His finger traces the path across the desert, down into forested lands, then back north toward the sea. Maps are more than directions, here they are stories of places seen, people met, goods carried across dunes and valleys. Isn't it peaceful to think that every line on a map is not just geography, but memory? Nearby, another scribe gently stacks his manuscripts. He has sold to this morning enough to buy grain and oil for his family. His smile is quiet, content, not greedy. He knows the work is not about wealth, but about continuity, about making sure each word finds another life. He lifts the final bundle into a chest, closes it, and ties the rope. The sound of rope against wood is low, steady, like the knot of a lullaby tied in place. Children run past again, laughing, their feet pattering against the earth. One carries a scrap of parchment, holding it aloft like a flag. Another chases, their voices rising in playful echoes. The laughter drifts through the air, mixing with the market's hum. Even joy becomes part of the music. Hear another verse in the song of the square. The caravans begin to move. Camels rise slowly, one after another, groaning as their burdens shift. Bells jingle, ropes creak, and drivers murmur encouragement in low tones. The line of animals stretches out like a ribbon across the sand. With them go salt, cloth, spices, and manuscripts, words wrapped in cloth, carried like treasures across the desert. Isn't it soothing to imagine knowledge traveling not by storm or speed, but by slow, steady footsteps, each one pressing softly into the earth? The market quiets as the caravans leave. Some stalls close, their cloth awnings folded back. Others remain open, selling food to those still lingering. The smell of flatbread, sweet dates, and hot tea lingers in the warm air. A group of men sit cross-legged, sipping slowly, their conversation no louder than a murmur. The market is not empty, just calmer, like a song fading into its final verse. You take a last look around, the shade beneath the awnings, the parchment fluttering in the breeze, the patient faces of merchants, the soft dust rising underfoot. The marketplace of words is not gone. It will return tomorrow and the next day and the next, as it has for generations. For now, though, it exhales, and as you step away, you carry its rhythm with you. The hum of voices, the smell of ink, the sight of manuscripts bundled among salt and spice. Knowledge does not rest only in silence. It also moves among laughter, trade, and song. And perhaps, as you drift further into rest tonight, you too carry those words with you, like a soft lantern glowing in your chest. Good evening again, dear listener. As the marketplace fades behind us, let us turn down a narrow lane, one where the noise of trade gives way to the softer sounds of home. Before we step inside, settle yourself once more. Adjust your blanket, feel the pillow beneath your head, and let your breathing match the calm rhythm of the story. In and out, slow and steady. Tonight we'll drift into the private lives of scribes, away from the market and into their doorways. The houses of Timbuktu were simple yet strong, built of clay and wood, their walls thick to hold back the desert's heat. Imagine standing before such a doorway, low, carved with care, perhaps with a woven mat pulled across to keep the dust away. You push it gently aside and step into a courtyard. The air inside feels cooler, shaded by high walls and the branches of a fig tree. A clay jar of water rests in the corner, sweating slightly in the heat, its surface beaded with droplets. Here, a scribe sits cross-legged with his family. His wife prepares millet porridge in a wide pot, stirring slowly as steam rises in soft ribbons. The smell is sweet, earthy, comforting. His children gather nearby, one playing with a carved wooden toy, another chasing a chicken across the courtyard. The scribe watches them with tired eyes, his ink-stained fingers resting in his lap. Have you ever come home after a long day and simply watched your loved ones, letting their presence be your rest? That is the feeling here. Dinner is served in a large bowl placed at the center of the mat. Everyone leans in together, breaking flatbread and dipping it into the porridge. The taste is warm, simple, filling. Occasionally, a date is passed around, its sweetness a small treat. The scribe eats slowly, grateful for food that grounds him after hours of ink and parchment. Isn't it soothing to imagine such meals? Number, rush, no noise, just family gathered around one dish, the rhythm of sharing, binding them together. After the meal, the courtyard fills with softer sounds. The children laugh as they play, their voices echoing against the clay walls. A neighbor drops by, carrying a small bundle of dried herbs as a gift. Conversations are unhurried, more like rivers winding through stone than fast streams. Words flow, then pause, then flow again. The scribe listens, sometimes speaking, sometimes simply letting the voices wash over him like a lullaby. And when the sky above deepens into indigo, lanterns are lit. Their glow spills gently across the courtyard, catching the dust in the air and making it shimmer like gold. The children curl up on mats, their laughter fading into yawns. The scribe leans back against the wall, letting the night breeze cool his skin. He closes his eyes for a moment, the scent of herbs and lamp oil mingling in the air. In this quiet, he is not just a keeper of words. He is a father, a husband, a neighbor. His home, like his library, is a sanctuary. And you, sitting beside him in this courtyard of clay and starlight, feel the same sanctuary wrapping around you. Now, the courtyard grows quieter now as the children drift into sleep. Their soft breathing mixes with the distant hum of desert winds, and the scribe feels the heaviness of rest tug at his own body. Yet he lingers, because there is something about the night that calls him still. He rises slowly, stretching his ink-stained fingers, and moves toward a low wooden chest tucked against the wall. Inside are his own manuscripts, not for sale, not for trade, but for his family. It is a book of poetry, copied years ago, filled with verses he returns to when he needs comfort. Isn't it soothing to know that even those who write for others still keep words for themselves, like a small fire lit only at home? He reads a few lines aloud, his voice soft enough not to wake the children. The words roll slowly, like pebbles across water, echoing faintly off the clay walls. His wife listens as she clears the meal, smiling faintly at verses she knows by heart. She hums in agreement at one line, chuckles gently at another. Their conversation is unspoken but alive, a language of shared memory. The scribe sets the manuscript aside and looks toward the sky. From the courtyard, the stars stretch wide and clear. The moon glows faintly, casting silver across the walls. He breathes deeply, filling his lungs with cool night air, Have you ever sat outside after a long day, simply breathing, letting the quiet do the work of mending? That is what he does now. The desert night doesn't ask questions, just offers its calm. A neighbor calls softly from over the wall, asking if the scribe will join the dawn prayer. He feels the warmth of community, even in the silence, knowing that when the sun rises, voices will rise with it, together. There is something deeply restful in belonging, not needing to prove, not needing to hurry, simply being part of a circle of lives. The lantern in the corner flickers. Its glow bathes the clay walls in gold, makes the air shimmer. The scribe runs his fingers across the rim of the jug, tracing patterns in the condensation. He takes a sip, then sets it down, the sound echoing softly. Small gestures, small moments, said each carries weight. Isn't it comforting to know that life's rhythm is built not of grand events, but of these gentle repetitions? A sip of water, a word of poetry, a child's laughter before bed. He lays down at last on his mat, stretching out on the woven surface. His body sinks into its familiar give. He pulls a blanket over himself, the coarse fabric rough but reassuring. His wife lies nearby, her breathing already steady, her face relaxed in sleep. The children shift faintly in their dreams, murmuring, then settling again. The scribe closes his eyes. Around him, the courtyard breathes, the soft hiss of wind, the glow of lantern fading, the rhythm of life slowing into silence. And in that silence, he rests not as a scholar or a copyist, but simply as a man at home, safe in the embrace of night. The sky begins to pale long before the city stirs. In the courtyard, the cool desert night gives way to the faintest hints of dawn. The scribe opens his eyes slowly, not startled, not hurried. He stretches his arms, his joints creaking softly, like wood bending in a breeze. The blanket slips from his shoulders, and the air brushes his skin, crisp and cool. From the corner, a rooster calls. The sound echoes faintly across the quiet streets, answered by another far away. The rhythm of the city's morning has begun, though still gently, like the first notes of a song. The scribe sits up, folds his blanket neatly, and takes a long sip from the jug of water. It is cool, refreshing, a promise of the day's rhythm to come. Have you ever noticed how that first sip in the morning feels like waking twice, once with your eyes and again with your body? He steps into the courtyard. The fig tree stands steady, its leaves dark against the lightening sky. His children stir on their mats, rolling over, murmuring softly in their dreams. His wife rises quietly, tying her headscarf, her movements slow, practiced. She begins to prepare the morning meal, simple porridge again, stirred over a small fire. The smell drifts gently upward, familiar and grounding. The scribe takes his small jug to wash. He pours water into his hands, splashes his face, wipes the sleep from his eyes. The water is brisk, startling, but in the most refreshing way. He hums softly as he washes, a tune learned from his father, perhaps his grandfather before him. These rituals are not rushed. They are steady, like beads sliding along a string. Each one brings him closer to wakefulness, closer to the day. Soon the neighbor's voice calls over the wall again, the dawn prayer. The scribe smiles, already expecting it. He gathers his robe around him, smooths the fabric, and steps out with quiet dignity. The streets are still soft with silence. A few men and boys walk alongside him, their sandals whispering against the dust. Their breaths form faint clouds in the cool morning air. The mosque ahead glows faintly with the first rays of light, its walls tinted pink by dawn. The prayer itself is gentle, steady, a chorus of voices rising and falling together. Imagine the sound, soft, melodic, as if the whole city is breathing in rhythm. When it ends, the men exchange quiet greetings. Smiles are small but genuine, words short but warm. The scribe lingers a moment, then walks back toward his home. The sun now brushing the tops of the buildings with gold. Back in the courtyard, breakfast is ready. His children sit cross-legged, waiting with eager eyes. He joins them, tearing bread, dipping it into porridge, passing small pieces of dates. The meal is shared quickly but joyfully, laughter mingling with the sound of clay bowls tapping against the mat. Isn't it peaceful to imagine such mornings? No rush, no noise, just family, food, and the promise of a new day. The scribe wipes his hands, sets the bowl aside, and rises once more. Soon he will return to his manuscripts, his lantern, his reed pen. But for now, he lingers in the soft comfort of home, where even the simplest routines carry the weight of quiet joy. After breakfast, the courtyard hums with quiet activity. His wife tidies the bowls, humming a tune as she works. The scribe watches them for a moment, his lips curving into a small, tired smile. His eyes are still heavy from the night of copying, yet there is pride in the way he carries himself, pride in knowing that his words, his patient ink, will someday feed these children as much as porridge and bread. He steps into the small room where he keeps his tools. The space is plain, a mat on the floor, a low desk by the wall, and a chest filled with parchment and ink. He kneels carefully, opening the chest, the wood creaking faintly. Inside are his instruments, reed pens sharpened to fine points, ink, jars sealed with cloth, sheets of parchment waiting like blank horizons. He selects one pen, rolls it gently between his fingers, and dips it into ink. The black liquid glistens, thick and smooth. The first stroke of the day feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. He copies a passage from memory before even glancing at the manuscript words, so familiar they live in his mind as clearly as on the page. The scratch of the pen fills the room, steady, repetitive, like the pulse of a drum. It's a sound that has followed him for years, a sound that will follow him still. Have you ever noticed how certain sounds like rain tapping a roof or waves lapping a shore can steady the mind without effort? That is what the scratch of his pen does for him. Outside the room, life continues. The children's laughter rises, then fades as they chase the chicken again. The faint smell of herbs drying in the courtyard drifts in, mingling with the sharper scent of ink. And still, the scribe writes, line after line. He steps out into the courtyard, blinking at the sunlight, and shares a word or two with his wife. She smiles, offering him a piece of flatbread or a sip of spiced tea. These small moments are like punctuation in his day, gentle commas that let him breathe before returning to the flow of sentences. Once, his youngest child toddles into the room, giggling, and places a small flower on his desk. The scribe laughs, softly, setting it aside as a bookmark. Isn't it sweet to think that even in a room of serious labor, The gift of a child's hand can become part of the work. That flower, pressed between pages, will outlive the moment itself as the day warms. The courtyard shimmers with heat. The scribe dips his pen again, steady and calm, letting his words grow like vines across the page. The family moves around him, weaving life into the walls of their home. And together, work and love blend, until it is hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. The day stretches onward, and the heat of the afternoon settles over the city. In the courtyard, the fig tree casts long shadows, its leaves whispering faintly in the dry wind. The scribe sets aside his pen for now, his eyes weary from the tight focus of hours. He steps into the courtyard, where his wife fans herself gently, and the children doze in patches of shade. The air hums with stillness, broken only by the buzz of insects and the distant bray of a donkey. He lowers himself onto a mat and pours water from the jug. The clay sweats against his palm, droplets cool against his skin. The water inside is warm from the sun, yet still it soothes as it passes his lips. He sighs, leaning back, closing his eyes. Have you ever let your body sink into rest in the middle of the day? Not sleep, not wakefulness, just that drifting state between. That is where he floats now. His wife brings him a small bowl of dates, their skins wrinkled, their sweetness rich. He eats slowly, savoring each bite. One of his children stirs, shuffles over, and leans against him, half asleep. He strokes the child's hair, feeling the fine strands between his fingers, and hums quietly. The sound is not for memory, not for work, just for comfort. Not for long, only to finish the passage he began that morning. His hand moves slower now, but steady, each word landing like a pebble placed carefully into a path. When the final line is complete, he sets down his pen with quiet satisfaction. The page rests in the lamplight, drying, patient. Evening falls gently. The courtyard glows with the amber of lanterns. The family gathers once more for their meal: millet, porridge, bread, perhaps a handful of roasted chickpeas. The flavors are simple but comforting, each bite steady and warm. The neighbors' greetings, the faint gossip of the market. Laughter ripples softly across the courtyard, blending with the crackle of the fire. After dinner, he reads aloud to his children, his voice slow, melodic, unhurried. The children giggle at the riddles, their laughter bubbling like water over stones. His wife smiles, shaking her head at their guesses, but her eyes soften as she listens. Isn't it peaceful to imagine such evening stories, shared not for profit, not for duty, but simply for love? When the children finally curl into their blankets, the scribe leans back against the wall once more. The stars shine above, the lantern flickers beside him, and his wife hums a quiet song as she tidies the bowls. The courtyard breathes with contentment. But for now, home is enough, and you, resting alongside him, feel the same contentment settle in your chest. The night gathers you both into its quiet arms, and the world fades softly into sleep. Good evening again, dear friend. You've rested through the scribe's home and family life. Now let us wander with him into another space, a place of learning. Tonight, we'll drift into the schools of Timbuktu, where children and scholars sat side by side, guided not by bells or clocks, but by patience and the rhythm of words. Before we enter, let yourself sink deeper into your pillow. Breathe in, slow and calm. Breathe out, softer still. The story will carry you. Imagine a small courtyard shaded by woven mats, stretched overhead. The ground is soft sand, smoothed flat by countless footsteps. A circle of children sits cross-legged, each with a wooden tablet resting on their knees. The tablets are coated with chalk or soot, smoothed clean each day, ready for fresh words. The teacher, an elder with kind but steady eyes, sits before them with a manuscript open across his lap. His voice carries slowly, deliberate, each word falling like a pebble into still water. The children lean forward, scratching words onto their tablets with reed pens. Their strokes are uneven, some letters tall, others crooked. Yet the teacher never scolds. He simply waits, then repeats the line again, softer this time, as though coaxing the words into place. Isn't it calming to imagine such patience, where learning feels less like a race and more like the steady turning of seasons? Around them, the city hums, faintly donkeys braying, merchants calling, but within the courtyard, the rhythm is quiet. The only sounds are the scrape of pens on wood, the murmur of voices repeating lessons, and the occasional yawn from a sleepy student. Have you ever felt that drowsy calm in a classroom, where the drone of a teacher's voice becomes less instruction and more lullaby? That is the spell here. The teacher pauses, lifts his eyes toward the children, and smiles faintly. He asks a question, not stern, but gentle, inviting. One child answers, stumbling over the words, and the teacher nods with encouragement. Another repeats the line with more confidence, and laughter ripples through the group. It is not mocking laughter, but the light-hearted kind that eases tension, reminding everyone that mistakes are simply part of the path. In a corner of the courtyard, an older student copies passages from a manuscript into a fresh volume. His strokes are careful, deliberate, his lips moving silently as he traces each line. The younger children glance at him now and then, eyes wide, imagining the day when their hands too will be steady enough to shape books. Isn't it soothing to picture this chain of learning, one generation copying for the next, each word flowing quietly forward? The air is warm, but the shade keeps it soft. A jug of water rests nearby, and from time to time the teacher pauses to sip, then offers it to the children. They pass it gently from hand to hand, each one drinking slowly. The water tastes of clay and cool stone, grounding them all in the desert's rhythm. And as the lesson continues, words flowing not with urgency, but with the soft assurance that knowledge, like sleep, always arrives in its own time, the lesson carries on, flowing as gently as the desert breeze. The teacher's voice is steady, not sharp, not hurried. He repeats lines until the children's lips can shape them, until their pens can trace them with confidence. Some write quickly, others slowly, but each is allowed their pace. Isn't it soothing to imagine such learning where no clock ticks, no bell rings, only patience guiding the way? The wooden tablets gleam faintly in the filtered light, their surfaces darkened by ink and soot. One child pauses, frowning, then wipes the surface clean with a damp cloth. Into smoothness again, he begins anew, copying carefully. The act of erasing is not failure. Here it is part of the rhythm. Like exhaling before drawing in the next breath, the teacher recites verses again, sometimes poetry, sometimes a proverb, sometimes lines of scripture. His voice has the cadence of waves on a shore, steady, predictable, endlessly comforting. Even the children who struggle grow calm under that rhythm. That's what fills the courtyard now, words looping like a lullaby. Each pass gentler than the last. In the corner, the older student continues his copying. His reed pen moves with quiet confidence, strokes smooth and sure. Every so often, he pauses, lifts the pen, blows gently on the ink to help it dry. His work is slower than the children's, but also steadier, like the slow tick of a pendulum against the restless scratching of small hands. The younger ones glance at him with admiration, whispering to one another that one day they too will write books. Isn't it peaceful to imagine ambition not as competition, but as quiet hope? The smell of lamp oil and parchment mingles with the faint aroma of herbs drifting in from the neighboring courtyard. Someone nearby is cooking lentils, and the savory scent wraps around the children like an invisible shawl. Their stomachs rumble softly, yet no one complains. Hunger here is just another rhythm, one that will be met soon enough. The teacher pauses for a break. The children put down their tablets, flexing their small fingers, shaking the cramps from their hands. The courtyard fills with gentle chatter, the kind of soft sound that soothes rather than stirs. One boy yawns so wide that his friends giggle, then yawn themselves, as if the air itself carries sleepiness. Have you felt that too, that contagious drift of drowsiness when one person yawns, and suddenly you do as well? That same wave passes through the class now, binding them in shared fatigue and shared rest. After a moment, the teacher taps his hand softly against the manuscript, calling the children back. They return, calmer, their voices quieter, their writing steadier. The lesson resumes, unhurried, as though the pause were simply another part of the song. And as you listen, perhaps your own body mirrors theirs. Your shoulders relax, your eyes grow heavier, your breath slows. The courtyard of Timbuktu's school is no longer far away, is here with you, a soft rhythm carrying you deeper into calm. The sun climbs slowly overhead, spilling more light into the courtyard. The mats above filter the brightness into a dappled pattern, soft shadows that shift like waves across the sand. The children glance upward now and then, watching the sunlight move. The teacher continues, now reciting short proverbs. One says, "Patience is the mother of wisdom." The children repeat it. Another proverb follows, "Knowledge is a garden. If not cultivated, it will wither." Have you noticed how simple phrases sometimes stay with you longer than long speeches? That's the power of these lines. They are seeds planted gently into young minds, waiting to grow. One boy leans too far on his tablet, smudging his ink. He gasps, worried, but the teacher chuckles softly and wipes it clean with his sleeve. "Again," he says kindly, and the boy begins anew. The mistake fades as quickly as it came, like a wave erased in the sand. Isn't it soothing to think of errors not as burdens, but as pauses, opportunities to begin again? The older student in the corner finishes a page and lifts it carefully, waving it in the air to dry. His strokes are even, his letters precise. The younger children glance at him again, their admiration quiet but glowing. The teacher notices, then tells them gently, "Patience brings steady hands." The words settle into the room like a feather, floating down, soft but certain. From outside the courtyard, the market's hum grows louder. Merchants are calling, animals braying, pots clanging. Yet inside, the rhythm of the class does not break. The walls hold the noise at bay, turning it into a distant hum, like waves heard from the shore. Have you ever sat in a quiet room and listened to faint sounds beyond a car passing? Footsteps in the hall, yet felt cocooned inside your own space. That is the feeling here. The children recite again, their voices now steadier, more confident. Some sway gently as they speak, their bodies rocking like reeds in the wind. Repetition has become rhythm. Rhythm has become comfort. The teacher closes his eyes as they chant, as though listening not to mistakes or missteps, but to the music of learning itself. Soon, he gives them a small break. The children scatter, some stretching in the sun, others sipping from the jug of water. One lies back in the sand, drawing shapes with a finger. Another leans against the wall, eyelids drooping. Their energy is not wild, but drowsy, like embers glowing rather than flames leaping. The courtyard feels less like a school and more like a family gathering, where knowledge is passed along as naturally as food. The teacher rests, leaning against his manuscript. His beard brushes his chest, his eyes half closed. For a moment, even he looks ready to drift into sleep. And perhaps you do too, feeling the same drowsy rhythm. The classroom has become a lullaby, and its soft chant carries you gently along. The sun has reached its height, pouring heat into the city. The mats above the courtyard sag slightly in the warmth, their woven fibers humming as the wind moves through them. The children sit back in the shade, their tablets resting across their laps, eyes half-lidded with drowsiness. Even learning slows beneath the midday sun. The teacher allows this pause. He closes his manuscript, folds his hands, and leans against the wall. His voice softens, no longer instructing, but simply sharing. He tells the children a story, one passed to him by his own teacher long ago. It is about a desert traveler who carried both water and a book. When the storm came, he clutched the book first, trusting that words would guide him even when water could not. The children listen, their eyes wide, then smile faintly, comforted. Have you ever heard a story that seemed simple, yet stayed with you long after? That is the spell of these tales. The older student, still copying in the corner, lifts his head. He listens to his pen resting in the ink. His lips move silently, repeating the lines as though etching them into memory. He smiles slightly, then bends once more to his page. Knowledge moves in circles here, teacher to child, child to page, page to reader, reader to memory. Each circle closes gently, then begins again. A faint breeze stirs the courtyard, carrying with it the scent of roasted grains from the market. The smell slips between the children, reminding them of hunger, yet also soothing them with its warmth. One boy sighs, resting his chin on his knees. Another girl tilts her head against her tablet, eyelids fluttering. Isn't it peaceful to imagine a classroom where sleep is not failure, but simply another way of listening? Even dreams can carry lessons. The teacher rises slowly and pours water into a clay bowl. He passes it around, each child sipping in turn. The water tastes of earth and stone, grounding them in the desert's steady rhythm. When the bowl comes back to him, he drinks the last sip, then sets it aside with a quiet thud. The sound settles, like a period at the end of a line. After the break, he reopens the manuscript. His finger traces the words as he reads, his voice low and deliberate. The children echo him once more, their voices overlapping like waves. Some falter, some stumble, but all return to the rhythm. Slowly, steadily, the lines take root. Have you noticed how repetition can feel like a lullaby? By the third or fourth time, the meaning fades, and only the rhythm remains steady, calming, endless. The older student has finished his page. He sets it aside carefully, then begins another. His strokes are precise, his breathing even. He does not rush, he does not pause. His work is as steady as the desert horizon itself, stretching far without break. The children watch him with quiet admiration, seeing in him the shape of their own futures. The heat presses down, but inside the courtyard, time feels slow and forgiving. The lesson continues like a soft chant, carrying everyone, teacher, children, even you, into a calm state where words and rest move together, gently, without hurry. As the afternoon stretches on, the courtyard begins to cool again. The sun shifts, casting longer shadows along the clay walls. The mats above filter the light into softer patterns now, like ripples across water. The children straighten slowly, their energy returning in small waves, just as the desert itself breathes in cycles. Heat.com, then cool again. The teacher closes the manuscript and sets it gently on his lap. He looks around the circle of young faces and asks one of them to recite what they have learned today. A boy begins hesitantly, his voice quiet, his words stumbling, yet no one interrupts. The teacher nods, encouraging, and the boy continues. By the end, his voice grows steady, carrying the words with pride. Isn't it peaceful to imagine a place where mistakes are not scolded but guided, like a hand helping another across a stream? Another child follows, then another. Soon the courtyard hums with voices, each one reciting lines of poetry, proverbs, and prayers. Their rhythm overlaps, blending into something like song. The sound rises into the warm air, mingling with the faint calls of merchants beyond the wall. For a moment, the city itself seems to join in the chorus. When the recitations end, the children wipe their tablets clean. The damp cloths squeak faintly, leaving the wood dark and smooth. Tomorrow, these surfaces will be filled again, but for now they rest like empty fields waiting for seeds. The children stack the tablets in a corner and stretch their arms, their laughter bubbling up as if released from stillness. The older student finishes his last page of the day. He blows gently across the ink, then places the sheet beside the others too dry. He gathers his tools carefully, wrapping his reed pens in cloth, sealing his ink pot. His movements are precise, reverent, like closing a prayer. He looks to the teacher, who nods with approval. Quiet pride passes between them, a language spoken without words. The teacher rises slowly. His joints creak, but his posture remains steady. He thanks the children, his voice low but warm, and reminds them that knowledge is not just for the classroom, is for life, for patience, for kindness. The children nod, some solemn, some grinning, their energy bubbling as they prepare to leave. The courtyard empties, little by little. Sandals scuff against the ground, voices fade into the street. The older student lingers, stacking the mats, tidying the corners. Finally, the teacher places the manuscript back into its cloth wrapping and sets it aside. He takes one last sip of water from the clay jug, then rests his hand on the wall. feeling its cool surface. The day's lessons have ended, but their echoes linger. The proverbs hum softly in the air. The children's laughter still drifts faintly, and the words copied on parchment shine faintly in the last light. Knowledge here does not roar whispers, steady and patient like the desert wind, and as you step out of the courtyard with me, let that whisper stay with you, a rhythm of words, of patience, of calm, guiding you as the night gathers once more. Good evening once more, dear friend. You've walked with me through lantern-lit rooms, quiet libraries, bustling markets, and family courtyards. Tonight, as we enter our final chapter, let us drift into something wider, the echo of all those words carried far beyond their makers. Before we step in, settle your blanket, let your shoulders rest, and breathe deeply. This last path is soft and endless, like a horizon at dusk. Imagine the desert at twilight. The heat has lifted, and the air cools gently against your skin. Caravans move like shadows across the sand, their bells jingling faintly in the vast silence. On their backs are bundles of salt, cloth, spices, and manuscripts, wrapped in cloth, tied with rope, nestled among goods. They ride quietly beneath the stars. Each step of the camels presses history deeper into the earth. These books, copied by weary hands under flickering lanterns, now travel to cities far away, Marrakesh, Cairo, even across seas, to lands the scribes themselves may never see. Isn't it soothing to think of words as travelers, moving without rush, carried not by storms, but by steady, faithful footsteps? Picture one of those manuscripts being unwrapped in a distant library. A scholar leans forward, running fingers across the parchment. The ink shines faintly, the letters precise. He begins to read, and in that moment, the scribe's voice whispers across time. The scholar may never know the scribe's name, the courtyard where he lived, the children who laughed outside his door, but the words remain alive. Have you ever found an old note or letter written by someone long gone and felt their presence beside you? That is what these manuscripts do. Some volumes carry astronomy maps of the heavens traced under Timbuktu skies. Others carry medicine, filled with remedies that still find their way into kitchens today. A few hold stories, poems, even jokes scribbled in the margins. Each page is a thread woven into a fabric larger than the city itself. Back in Timbuktu, the scribes may never see the full reach of their work. They copy line after line, night after night, not for fame, but for continuity. They are gardeners, planting seeds they may never harvest, trusting that others will sit beneath the shade of those trees. Isn't that a gentle thought, that your quiet work might one day cradle someone you'll never meet? The desert wind rises faintly, carrying grains of sand across the dunes. The manuscripts remain steady, tied to their camels, waiting for their next readers. And you, standing under the same stars, feel the echo of their patience. Words copied centuries ago drift now into your ears through this story, as though the scribes themselves are still at work. Lanterns glowing, pens scratching, voices humming. The night deepens, the stars burn bright. The manuscripts travel on, and perhaps, as you picture them, you too feel yourself drifting like those pages, carried gently across time, safe, steady, endless. The caravans wind their way north, their pace slow but steady. Days stretch into weeks, each one marked by the rising and setting of the sun. At night, the desert sky becomes a canopy of silver, the stars guiding travelers as faithfully as ink guides a pen. Beneath that sky, manuscripts rest in silence, tied securely to camels, waiting for new eyes to bring them back to life. In Marrakesh, a bustling city of color and trade, one such manuscript is unwrapped. The merchant who carried it steps aside, and a scholar leans close to examine the pages. His hands are careful, reverent. He reads a line, then another, his lips moving silently. The words of Timbuktu scribe ripple outward here, in a place the scribe himself has never walked. Isn't it calming to imagine your quiet labor one day traveling farther than your own feet ever could? Some manuscripts cross into Cairo, where great libraries hold shelves upon shelves of texts. There, among works from Greece, Persia, and India, sit the careful words of Timbuktu. They mingle not with rivalry, but with kinship, each book a voice in a long, low conversation. The scholars who copy them add their own notes in the margins, their own small whispers. Centuries later, those notes too will be copied, and so the chain continues. Beyond Africa, some words travel even farther. Sailors carry manuscripts across seas, tucked into chests beside spices and cloth. A merchant in Sicily opens one, surprised at its diagrams of the stars. Another, in Spain, reads about remedies made from honey and herbs. Slowly, gently, knowledge crosses languages. As scribes in far-off lands copy the words into Latin, Greek, and later into tongues we still speak today. Isn't it soothing to think of knowledge as water, seeping through cracks, flowing quietly into new spaces, nourishing wherever it goes? It does not shout, it does not rush. It moves with patience, settling into every vessel offered to it. Back in Timbuktu, the scribes do not know all this. They rise each day, sharpen their pens, light their lamps, and copy. They pass manuscripts to merchants, who pass them to caravans, who pass them to cities. The scribes do not see the ripple, but they trust it. And perhaps that trust is itself the most calming lesson. Do the work, quietly, faithfully, and let time carry it where it will. In your own life, maybe you've done something small, written a letter, planted a tree, spoken a kind word. Think of the scribes, their lives filled with repetition, their nights with aching wrists, their days with stacks of parchment, and yet, centuries later, their words still glow. Isn't it comforting to believe that your small, steady acts may echo, too, even if you never hear them? The desert winds shift, the caravans move on. The manuscripts rest in their bundles, traveling like whispers across centuries. And you, listening now, drift with them steady, unhurried, safe within the rhythm of their journey. Centuries pass, and still the manuscripts endure. Some rest safely in family chests, guarded like heirlooms. Others lie on library shelves, their pages yellowing, their ink fading, but still legible. A few travel far and are forgotten for a while, tucked into storerooms, hidden in corners, yet, like seeds lying dormant in dry soil, they wait patiently for the right moment to awaken again. In times of turmoil, wars, raids, the rise and fall of rulers, the manuscripts are often hidden. Families wrap them in cloth, bury them beneath floors, or tuck them into caves. They whisper to one another, "Keep them safe. The storm will pass." Isn't it calming to know that even in chaos, people choose to protect words, to guard the quiet flame of knowledge as tenderly as one guards a child? Imagine a scribe's descendant, centuries later, lifting a chest lid and finding those same books. The parchment smells faintly of dust and age, yet the letters are clear. She runs her hand across them, feeling the ridges of ink. In that moment, her ancestor's voice echoes back to her, steady, unbroken. Isn't it soothing to think of family ties carried not just in blood, but in the flow of words? Even when empires crumble, the manuscripts remain. They outlast battles, they outlast kings, they outlast even memory itself. A city may burn, but a single page, carried away, can plant its knowledge anew. Words, unlike walls, do not need stone. To endure, they need only patience, steady hands, and safe passage. Think of this. How many times in your own life have you held something fragile, a photo, a letter, a book that has survived far longer than expected? You run your fingers over it, and suddenly you are connected to a time you never lived, to people you never met. That is the same bridge these manuscripts create, spanning deserts, centuries, and silence. In Timbuktu, the libraries grow dusty, but still they breathe. Scholars return to them, brushing the pages gently, copying once more, making sure the voices continue. They do not rush, they do not despair. They know that knowledge does not need to shout to survive. It only needs to be carried softly, like a lantern cupped in careful hands. The manuscripts themselves are not proud. They do not shine or boast. Their covers are simple, their pages sometimes uneven, but their quietness is their strength. Have you ever noticed how the softest voices are often the ones we remember best, like a lullaby, a whisper, a gentle word spoken at just the right time? That is the voice of Timbuktu's wisdom.com, enduring, endlessly patient, and now, centuries later, those voices drift into your own night. You hear them not as lectures, not as commands, but as soft stories, gentle rhythms, steady breathing across time. Their endurance becomes your comfort. Their patience becomes your rest. The manuscripts wait still, and you, listening here, rest with them safe in their silence, calm in their continuity, carried gently into dreams. Time flows forward, as it always does, yet the manuscripts of Timbuktu still whisper. In the present day, scholars unroll their cloth wrappings, brushing off dust, marveling at the neat lines written by hands long gone. Some pages are brittle, their corners curled like dried leaves. Yet the words remain steady, their ink holding fast against time. Isn't it soothing to imagine that something so fragile can still outlast storms, fires, even centuries? Modern readers bend low, much like the scribes once did. They copy, again not with reed pens, but with scanners, cameras, and digital tools. Each word is preserved, not just on parchment, but in light, stored in glowing screens across the world. The manuscripts that once rode camels across deserts now travel invisibly through cables and satellites. From sand to screen, the journey continues, and yet the feeling remains the same. A quiet reverence, a stillness, a calm patience. Have you noticed how libraries today still hold that same hush? Even when filled with technology, they echo the silence of those clay-walled rooms in Timbuktu. The rhythm is unchanged. A reader bends over a page, time slows. Words settle gently into memory. Students in faraway lands now read Timbuktu's wisdom. They learn how scribes measured stars, how healers mixed remedies, how poets shaped verses of love and longing. Each line bridges past and present, showing that knowledge, once released, never truly vanishes. Isn't that comforting to know that your work, however small, can ripple far beyond your reach? Think of your own life for a moment. Maybe you've written something, a note, a message, even a journal entry. At the time, it may have felt small, but what if, centuries later, someone found it, and in your words, they felt less alone? That is the gift Timbuktu's scribes gave us, proof that every line, no matter how humble, carries the possibility of comfort across time. In Timbuktu itself, the libraries still breathe, families still guard manuscripts in wooden chests, still wrap them in cloth, still whisper their importance to children. The desert winds still blow across the walls, carrying sand and silence in equal measure. And yet, the words remain. Knowledge waits patiently. Like a lantern with endless oil, the world outside changes, nations rise and fall. New inventions hum and glow. Cities swell with noise, but inside the manuscripts, the rhythm is the same. Scratch of pen, flicker of light, whisper of voice. A rhythm so steady, it feels like a heartbeat across centuries. And now, as you rest, you feel it too. The manuscripts are not far, they are here, breathing softly beside you. Each word of this story is another ember, carried from their lanterns into your night. Each pause, each image, each rhythm is part of that chain. Isn't it peaceful to imagine that you are part of their continuity now, their listener, their dreamer, their companion? The manuscripts wait still, patient as ever. And tonight, they wait with you, guiding you gently into sleep, reminding you that silence itself can be a kind of eternity. The night deepens again over Timbuktu. The city rests, its streets empty, its courtyards quiet. A lantern flickers in one home, then fades, leaving only the glow of stars above. Those same stars have guided caravans, scribes, and readers for centuries, and tonight they shine for you too. Somewhere, a manuscript rests in its cloth wrapping. Its pages are silent, yet alive, waiting for the next hand to untie the knot, the next pair of eyes to lean close, the next voice to breathe its words aloud. Knowledge never rushes, it waits. Isn't that comforting? To know that wisdom does not demand, it simply abides, patient and steady, like the desert itself. Imagine yourself holding one of those books now. The cover is worn, the pages uneven, but the ink still glimmers faintly in the light. You trace the lines with your fingertip, feeling the grooves pressed centuries ago by a scribe's reed pen. His hand is long gone, but his rhythm lives on in yours. You whisper the words softly, and suddenly you are not alone. You are joined by every reader before you, every scribe who copied, every child who listened. The chain stretches across time, and you are part of it now. The manuscripts of Timbuktu do not shout of battles or kings. They speak instead of patience, of healing, of stars, of gardens, of stories told at night. They remind us that history is not only the noise of power, but also the quiet hum of endurance. Isn't it peaceful to know that even in a loud world, silence still carries? As you listen now, your breath has slowed. Your body rests heavier into the pillow. The rhythm of this story has blended with your own heartbeat, steady, calm. The scribes, lanterns, the libraries, the marketplaces, the courtyards, they are all around you still, glowing softly, whispering gently, holding you in their quiet arms. May their patience guide you tonight. May their silence remind you that rest is as valuable as work, that dreams are as important as words. Close your eyes now and let the manuscripts travel with you, not in bundles tied to camels, but in the folds of your own imagination, carrying light across your sleep. If this calm journey has helped you unwind, you may choose to like or to subscribe, or even to share these whispers with someone else, but only if it feels right. For now, simply rest. The scribes will keep their lanterns lit for you. And as this story fades, let me leave you with a gentle blessing. May the voices of the past bring peace to your present. May the patience of the scribes carry you into deep and restful dreams. And may you awaken tomorrow with the calm assurance that even the quietest acts endure. Good night, dear friend. Sweet dreams.